Hello and welcome to Todd Talk, where insight meets inspiration. I'm your host, Todd Hiller. I'm an author, speaker, and longtime community leader, here to guide you on a journey towards fulfillment and balance. In every episode, we'll explore ways to fill life's emptiness, helping you uncover practical tools to create harmony, purpose, and happiness. Whether it's thriving in your career, nurturing personal growth, or simply finding joy in the everyday, Todd Talk is your space for real conversations and actionable advice. So let's thrive together, personally, professionally, and beyond. This is Todd Talk, and I'm thrilled to have you here.
So if you guys know me, you know that I've talked a lot about regret in the past. And I've talked about specifically the story of my grandfather and how I was super close to his driveway, didn't stop to see him, and then that night he passed away. And all the things regret has taught me, and there are lots of things. But as I've thought about this, the other day I had a bunch of thoughts swimming around in my head, and I really started thinking about the stories we tell ourselves, so to speak, in terms of regret. So my question to you is, how many conversations have you never had because you were already convinced you knew the answer or knew how they would end? I think, I know I myself can say that I've done that a lot. I have talked myself out of things before I even started because I thought they were just going to go poorly. Now, they didn't always, and sometimes I got around to starting or having the conversation or trying the thing, and it ended up going better than I thought. And the idea about regret, and the thing I thought about just recently, was that regret is really fascinating because for a long time, I focused on that pain of regret and what it teaches you and how it makes you change the way you make decisions and all the things it taught me about my life. You know, losing someone that I was literally 365 feet from his driveway, and then I didn't go see him and he passed away and I could never see him again. And there's a lot about that and a lot surrounding that side of regret. But the other side of regret, I think, can be kind of healthy because it pushes us to take chances. It encourages us to say yes before the opportunity disappears, because if we say, listen, I don't want to regret not taking that chance, and if you guys have followed me for a while, you know that I have said sometimes there is far more regret in the chances not taken than there is in the opportunities that we failed at, right? Sometimes failure is tough and it's difficult, but sometimes not taking that chance and ending up regretting it for literal years on end hurts a whole lot worse. And it reminds us that we'd rather fail trying than spend years wondering what if. That's kind of the healthy side of regrets, and that's a good thing. It's better to try and fail than never try at all. But regret also has this hidden side, and sometimes the fear of future regret becomes so powerful that we become afraid to make any decision at all. We get this analysis paralysis, and we stay kind of frozen, and we sort of end up in this endless loop of what if and what if and what if. And it works its way into lots of different parts of our lives. We can think, what if I say the wrong thing? What if the other person gets offended? What if they misunderstand me? What if I lose the relationship? What if this changes everything? And eventually, when you ask yourselves those questions often enough, you stop talking, you stop asking, you stop trying. And ironically, the thing you feared most often becomes the thing that you create in the end. You kind of created your own problem that was born out of something you thought was going to be a solution. And something about me that probably most of you know is I love to talk. And probably one of the reasons I have a podcast and sit here and talk to all of you and who are gracious enough to listen. But sometimes one of the biggest communication mistakes we make is assuming we already know how someone else will react. And a good friend of mine have had lots of conversations about this, about not assuming you know what the other person is thinking. But sometimes we decide, the other person will be angry, or they'll be hurt, or they'll be happy, or they'll be excited, or they'll think I'm selfish, or they'll say no, or they'll say yes, or they'll never understand, or they will understand, and all those things in between. But here's the problem. We don't actually know. I am me. You are you. We are us. We don't get to write the other half of the conversation before they've even spoken a single word, most specifically because we are not the other person. That's not communication. That's imagination. We have this invisible script in our head, and we think, I think you'll be offended if, so I didn't say this. Or, I figured you'd be mad if I said this. Or it can be positive too. I figured you'd be excited that I said this. And we let that idea and that imagination worm its way into our brain, and then we allow that to take the place of the actual conversation and the actual communication. So my caveat to that is that sometimes you do know what the other person is thinking. sometimes you're close enough to that person, you know the things they like, you know the things they don't like, you know the way they will react to certain things, whether it's about food or about the political climate or about travel destinations or about what you're going to make for dinner. When you know someone really well, there is a degree of known things and known reactions and known feelings because you know the other person well. So I'm not saying to not rely on those when you have conversations. I'm not saying to not use those as intuition to do a good job of anticipating your partner's needs or your manager's needs if it's someone you work with, or your friend's needs or your parents or your colleagues, whoever. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm not saying don't rely on previous information and the things you know about the other person, because that can be really helpful and go a long way in helping have productive and useful conversations. What I am saying is you don't get to feel someone else's feelings. You don't get to know what they are going to feel. You get to play your part in the conversation and say X, Y, and Z, and then you let them react and you allow them to react. And if it brings up some difficult things, then you can talk through them. But you don't get to decide how someone else feels. You only get to decide how honestly and respectfully you can communicate. And it sounds so silly to say it out loud, like, well, of course we don't get to decide how someone else feels. We're not that person. We don't know how it will affect them. But a lot of times with the people in our lives, we really think that we know what they're going to think or feel or say in response. And so we use that as a way to kind of prevent ourselves from actually taking action or saying that thing out loud. And this is that tricky part of regret. We experience regret and we say, man, I don't want to have that happen again. I want to take the chance and do the thing and not feel like I missed out and not be old and decrepit when I'm 90 years old and say, gosh, if only I did X, Y, and Z. And so that part of regret lets us do the thing and try the thing and chase the goals and talk to that person and go on the first date and reach out to the old friend and all those things that we do to avoid feeling regret about it, stop and visit the loved ones, all that kind of stuff, make space for family. There's dozens of these. But what we can't let that do is we can't allow that regret and that fear of, oh my God, what if I don't get a chance to do it? Or what if I say the wrong thing? Or what if this goes wrong? Or what if this is not the right thing to choose? We can't let that shadow and overshadow and cloud our judgment and our ability to actually go after the things we want to go after and actually communicate the things we want to communicate to other people, and in a lot of instances, even to ourselves. And a good friend of mine who is just super emotionally intelligent, like I'll put it that way, like highest respect for this person, for their emotional intelligence and just their kindness and their empathy and their compassion and their love. They're just an amazing person all around. But one of the things that I've talked to them a lot about is that you or we, however you want to view it, you are not responsible for predicting every emotional response from the other person. And you are also not responsible for how what you say or do makes them feel. Now, don't be a jerk. Don't do things on purpose to make someone uncomfortable or unhappy. That's not what I mean. But the other person is going to have feelings and reactions about every conversation they have with every single person, not just you. And it's not up to you to worry or to try to decide or avoid their actual feelings that are going to come up and only say the things that you think are going to keep them happy and keep the relationship copacetic and sunshine and roses. Your job is to communicate honestly and respectfully and then allow the other person to do the same back to you and have a really good dialogue and a really good conversation, because we are responsible for lots of things, right? Being honest, being respectful, listening. Listening is a huge part of conversation, right? Don't just listen to respond, listen to understand. I love that phrase. Staying in the conversation. And if emotions come up, don't run away from them. You work through them together with that person. Listen, everybody in this world has emotions. Everybody has things that make them feel differently about all kinds of things. Working in the fire service and being in the fire service for as long as I have, we're creeping up on 3 decades, which makes me feel kind of old, but right, almost 30 years in the fire service. There are things that I have learned that bother people differently. I know for a fact, my friends and colleagues also in the fire service, I know which ones don't like heights. I know which ones have trouble with calls that involve kids. I know which ones have trouble with medical calls that involve vomit or eyeballs. And I know which ones have trouble with, legit, some have trouble with confined space, burning buildings, blackout condition. They don't like being where it's super smoky and they can't see. And I've come to know that about my friends and my colleagues, but I am not responsible for those feelings. I can't just always say, I'll do my best not to say or do anything that puts you in those situations. In the fire service, sometimes the guy who doesn't like heights has to go up on the roof. It's just one of those things you navigate. But by the same token, I don't expect me saying something about heights, like, oh, hey, don't worry about being up high, you'll be fine, to automatically cure his or her fear of heights and being up high. I don't get to decide how the other person feels. I get to communicate honestly and effectively. Now, I could say, hey, listen, you're just going up a short roof ladder. You know, it's a ranch house. The gutters are, only like 10 inches above my head. I promise if you fall, it'd be like falling off my shoulders. It's not that bad. You'll be okay. I'll foot the ladder for you. Things will be okay. You'll be safe. I can say that, but I don't get to feel automatically reassured just because I said it. It's up to the other person. And if they don't feel automatically reassured, that's not on me. That's just part of the response and the emotional feeling of that person in terms of that conversation. And it's like this with all kinds of things. I use the fire service as an example, but it's like this with romantic relationships and with love. It's like this with difficult communications with family members, or difficult conversations with family members about loved ones. When it comes to death of a loved one or someone close to you, when it comes to trying or manage your money the best you can, when it comes to finding a new job, working with a new boss, lots and lots of things. The list can go on, and it applies differently to every person when it comes to the category, but the overall idea is the same. You're not responsible for predicting their emotional response. You just are responsible for being a good and honest and respectful communicator on your end. And if tough stuff comes up, don't run from them. Just talk through it, and talk through it with the same honesty and integrity and emotional intelligence. And I promise you can get from point A to point B, and even if something difficult comes up, you can get through that as well. Now, here comes the fun and funny part of this episode. I promise they're not always serious, and you guys know me. I love to tell a good story, and I love humorous stories. So I was going to just refer to this as some person that I knew, because I figured didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But it's a pretty simple and easy and innocent story. And also, I'm pretty sure the person involved doesn't listen to my podcast. So if they do, then they're in for a surprise. So my cousin, I think he was a preteen at the time, was on the way to take a shower. He walked by his mom in the kitchen and said, I'm going to take a shower. Now, she was a mom of 3 boys. She spent a lot of time cooking and cleaning and doing laundry and cleaning the house and all that kind of stuff, in addition to working a full-time job. And if you are a parent yourself, you know that being a parent is challenging. Being a parent to a boy is extra challenging, and being a parent to 2 or more boys is like a whole nother level of parenting. So she always had a lot going on. As she was in the kitchen, he walks by. He says, hey, I'm going to take a shower. And she said, okay. She said, hey, while you're in there, scrub with an SOS pad for me, please. And he's like, okay. And off he goes. So she figured he's going to take a shower anyway. He's going to be in there. If I have him scrub the shower with an SOS pad, even if he didn't do a great job as a preteen, at least it would help clean the shower up a little bit. She could spray it off and do a little bit, final cleaning later on, but at least he could get a jump on it. So, good to go. Everything's happy. Now, he went in. He took a shower. He scrubbed himself. And then when he came out of the shower, he wasn't wearing a shirt. And his mother said, oh, my God, why are you all red and scratched up? What happened to you? Are you sunburned? Did you get attacked by a mountain lion? Like, what is wrong with you? And he looked at her and he said, you told me to scrub with an SOS pad. And so in the moment, I'm sure it was painful for him, because obviously if you're scrubbing your skin with an SOS pad, I've never tried it, but I'm going to go on a limb and say it doesn't feel good. So I'm sure there was a bit of laughter once it happened, but I'm also sure there was a bit of frustration on both of their parts when it was going on, because, look, here's the thing. Neither person, neither my aunt nor my cousin, was trying to create a problem. My aunt assumed that my cousin would know what she meant, and that she also assumed he knew that she would mean clean the shower, that's how you clean the shower. She used an SOS pad and some cleaner. She also assumed probably that he would stop if scrubbing his skin with an SOS pad hurt, but I think he kind of kept right on going. And by the same token, and at the same time, my cousin assumed, well, his mom would know best, so like she wouldn't, that's what she told him to do. He also assumed she wouldn't tell me to do something painful. She's my mom, right? She's told me to do this. And he also assumed that she meant scrub his body and not the shower. So each of them had 2 or 3 assumptions. Now, nobody had bad intentions. But the assumptions created this giant problem, and quite a painful one, if I remember talking to my cousin when it actually happened. And it's laughable now, and we can laugh about it now. But this can connect back to our adult life because we assume lots of things during our day-to-day lives. We assume things in our own head about ourselves, about our own lives, about the things that are going to happen or go right or wrong. That's one thing. But I think we also assume things about other people in our conversations we have with them. We assume, oh, I thought you knew. Oh, I assumed you understood. Oh, I figured you'd be upset. Oh, I didn't want to bother you. Oh, I thought you were mad or you would be mad. Oh, I didn't ask because I already knew what you would say. Or I didn't ask because I already knew what I thought you would say. Most conflict isn't created by bad people. I guarantee everybody listening right now has had some kind of conflict with a person they love or are close to at one time or another, a fight, an argument, a disagreement, and it wasn't because either person was bad. It was created because sometimes our communication is incomplete, and it's really, really critical to use complete communication and honest communication to kind of avoid this. And curiosity beats assumption 10 times out of 10. And a simple way you can do this and make sure curiosity shows up instead of assumption is replace assumptions with questions. Instead of assuming, ask. Ask the person. Don't assume. Don't think you know. You know what they say assume does, right? That's one of my dad's and my grandfather's famous phrases from a long time ago. But instead of assuming, ask. Instead of predicting, clarify or ask for clarification. And instead of, quote unquote, mind reading and thinking you know everything about everything in the situation, communicate. Curiosity is almost always more productive than certainty. You might think you have all the answers about any given situation, but if you are curious about it and curious enough to ask questions, even about a situation you already know about or a situation you've already been in, you can always learn something new. Even in situations we have been in before where we think we know how this is going to go. Here's how it starts. Here's how it goes. Here's how it ends. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt, right? We all love that phrase, or at least some people do. When that kind of thing shows up in our mind and when we approach conversations that way and we think, oh, I already know what's going to happen, we automatically rule out, one, the good things that can happen because we automatically assume the worst. That's another crazy thing about our human brain, right? We don't assume the good things. We always assume the worst. Well, what if this happens? What if this happens? Well, what if everything goes wrong? How about what if everything goes right? That is such an easy switch to make, and it broadens the horizon of possibility of things to be good in your life like tenfold. But this week, every time you catch yourself saying, oh, they're probably, or, oh, I know what they'll say, or, oh, they'll never, or they're going to, every time you catch yourself doing that, be conscious of this, and then ask yourself, do I actually know that for a fact? Or am I simply telling myself a story? Have I let assumptions show up and stand in the way of my curiosity and a good, honest conversation? And a lot of times I think that's the case because every assumption is a story we've written without inviting the other people to help write the ending or to help write the story at all. And you don't have to hammer out every single specific thing and walk through things with baby steps and like, oh my God, okay, I said this, now I want to ask how they feel. And I said this, and I'm going to ask how they feel, right? We are all capable of having adult human conversations. Just remember, as you go into things, when you start to feel like you might know what's going to happen, or you might get in that negative predictive mindset of, oh, I know this is going to turn around, or I know this is going to turn bad, or I know this is going to go wrong. When that kind of mentality shows up, that's when I want you to remember to turn the things around, to flip the script, flip it on its head, turn it upside down, whatever phrase you want to use, and approach it from a different angle, and remember the perspective that curiosity beats assumption. Because communication isn't about perfectly predicting someone else's reaction. It's about being willing to have the conversation anyway. The conversation we avoid because of assumptions often become the very conversations we really wish we'd had. And that's the whole idea of like regret that we're trying to avoid, right? We're trying to use regret as a tool to maintain healthy choices in our life and in our brain and make sure we're doing the things we want to do and taking the chances we want to take and living in the moment and going for the things we want to go for and pursue and not living in a place where we just avoid doing things or we miss out on opportunities because we just let them pass. But that being said, don't let fear write someone else's lines for you. You have to let the other people and their actions and their reactions and their words speak for themselves. No pun intended. I know we're talking about conversations, but you have to allow the other person to speak their part in the conversation. If we could have a one-sided conversation without another person, we wouldn't have to talk to anybody. We could just be like, oh, me and this other person are going to be involved in this situation tomorrow. Here's how it's going to go. I know how everything will work out. I know what I'm going to say. I know what they will say. I know how it's going to end. Perfect. I don't even need them to show up. They can stay home and relax on the couch. I'll just show up and have the conversation with myself, and the event will be over and everybody will be happy, right? That's not how life works. We need the other person to play an active part in this. We need the other person to play the role they are meant to play. And it's up to us to be honest and to communicate well, but not to try to avoid things that we think are going to bring out different emotions in other people, because we never, ever know. You might be so worried about a conversation with someone and it going wrong or going poorly, and the other person's perfectly fine. They're not upset. They're not mad. They're perfectly okay with what you said, and you can keep going from there. Now, if you did one of two things, if you avoided that conversation altogether, you would get nowhere. And also, if you had that conversation, but you assumed you knew what they were going to say, and you kind of pushed and bashed your way through it awkwardly because you thought you knew how it was going to go, and then you had to work through all the things that didn't quite go as planned or as you assumed, it's not the best conversation. It gets clunky and difficult and emotional and hard to work through and hard to walk through. So remember, don't assume things and don't assume you know. Be curious. Ask the questions. Ask for clarification if you need to. And also, I know I said we talked a lot about feelings and other people's emotional reactions, and you're not responsible for how they feel. And while that may be true, you're not responsible for how they feel. You are, and you can be, and you should be responsible for checking in with them, especially if it's someone you care about a lot or someone you love. It's okay to check in with them about how they're feeling in terms of the conversation. And it can be, again, a simple and honest and curious question. Are you doing okay? Hey, we've been talking about X, Y, and Z. It feels kind of heavy on my end. Are you doing okay? How are you? How are you feeling? Do you want to talk about this more? Even if it's not something you're involved in, you know someone else has just ended up walking through or working through something differently. Don't assume that they're upset or hurting or good or bad or ugly or indifferent or anything in between. Ask them how they are and use that as a tool to walk forward and say, okay, now that you've answered me and now that I know how you're feeling, I have some questions for you, or I have some advice for you, or I have a way to help you feel like I hear you and you can come lean on me and offer advice and offer a safe space for them. All those things are born from curious, open, honest conversations, and assumptions really kind of get in the way. So to tie this all together, regret and assumptions in conversation are kind of these two tricky things that can go hand in hand but also can work against each other. As you are living your life, please, please, please do the things you want to do. Do the things you think will make you happy, that you think are interesting. Pursue the things and the people and the places and the events and the careers that you think and you know will make your heart and your soul and your bones happy. And when you do that, not everything will always go right. Sometimes failure will creep in along the way. That is perfectly okay. Grab the failure, pick it up, dust it off, stand it right there beside you and say, hey, let's go. Now you can walk right there beside me. We'll do this together. Me and you, failure. You've taught me a lot of cool lessons about approaching this thing, so stand right there next to me. Me and you, failure. We're going to take this thing on again, and we're going to give it a second, a third, and a fourth try. We're going to hit it head on, and we're going to see how good we can make it. Do that for yourself. And when it comes to regret, there will be things in your life that happen that let regret bite you. And when you learn that, don't blame yourself and don't let regret consume you so much that you never, ever come out of your shell because you are so afraid that it's going to happen again. This life is crazy, you all. It is a crazy, beautiful path we get to walk down, and sometimes it is not always easy. But if you look for the goodness and you look for the happiness and you look for the things that make you smile and make you content and make you stop and feel the breeze or listen to the birds or pick a random wildflower and be happy about that, make sure those are the things you are bringing into your life and you are feeling and focusing on. Wherever you are in the world, my friends, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this. I appreciate you very, very much. Come on, find me on social media, TikTok and Instagram. My username is @ToddWHiller. You can also like and follow this podcast so you do not miss any updates. As always, thanks for hanging out with me. I hope you have the best rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to Todd Talk. If you've liked what you've heard, please go ahead and subscribe and follow along so you don't miss any updates or new episodes. Thanks very much and enjoy the rest of your day.